Whoa! Howdy, Cannabuddies. We are back. Welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen. And I took a bit of an unintended sabbatical the last couple of weeks. Haven't really gone anywhere. I've just been taking some extra shifts. If you've listened to the show before, you might know that I'm a broadcaster around Chicago. I do news and traffic on the radio. You can hear me on a bunch of different stations. I do news on 720 WGN AM. And I usually around the holidays, people will take time off. Broadcast is a 24/7 industry, and so that usually leaves somebody like me with an opportunity to take some extra fill-in shifts. And because I've got a wedding coming up in 6 months, I've been kind of taking every opportunity I can to stock away some extra cash, and that's really what kind of affected my workflow these last couple of weeks. So I apologize if you've been waiting for a new episode. It's here right now, and I'll try and do better going forward about warning you if there's going to be any kind of gap in my publication schedule. But if it's your first time here, welcome. I really appreciate you joining. This is a show where we try to take a journalistic look at all things cannabis. There's a lot of pro-cannabis programming out there. There are a lot of people who love the plant, and I love those people. Don't get me wrong, I am right there with you, but I think that the reason I started this show was because I felt that there was something missing from the conversation around cannabis. It's not just a matter of me coming out here and telling you how much I love this plant and how much it's changed my life. That doesn't really matter. What matters is talking to neutral parties, ideally. Talking to people like Dr. Latrice Montgomery, who I spoke with on episode 4. She is a professor at the University of Cincinnati. She's doing research on cannabis, and she is measuring the effects of cannabis on developing brains and lungs, and she is not somebody that I would qualify as pro-cannabis, and that's perfectly okay. I want to talk to people who don't agree with me that cannabis is a wonderful plant and that it can do so much for people. I just want to talk to people who are doing the real research. And if something's going on, like if some company is engaging in what's called THC inflation. I've done episodes about this. If some company is inflating their displayed percentages of THC on certain cannabis products just in an effort to upcharge, because different states have this thing that they've done where they allow companies to charge more for products if their percentage of THC is higher. They basically charge the consumer a premium for high THC products. Well, some companies are now engaging in the shady practice of lying and saying that their THC is higher than it actually is so that they can charge this premium. If some company's doing that and I find out about it, I'm going to tell you about that. And when somebody sponsors me, if I'm fortunate enough for somebody to pay me or otherwise compensate me to tell you that their product is great, I'm going to be open and transparent with you about that sponsorship. You can go back and listen to any episode that I've done thus far. When I'm sponsored, I make it clear that somebody is paying me to say this. And when I'm telling you that I like something and I'm not sponsored to say it, but it's just my opinion, I'm clear and transparent about that too. I have something, at least I like to think of myself as someone with a little journalistic integrity. And I'm not here to bullshit you. I'm not here to try and puff up anybody else. I'm doing this because I'm passionate about it, and because I love cannabis, and because I am a journalist. I'm curious and I want to know, what can cannabis do? What is it really doing to our brains? What can it bring to your life? Cannabis has changed my life in a wonderfully positive way. And anybody who listens to the show, I think it's pretty obvious that I am pro-cannabis. But that does not mean that I'm only speaking to other pro-cannabis people. My guests are not all pro-cannabis. And my point here being, there are a lot of podcasts, there are a lot of shows out there that are just going to continue glorifying Mary Jane, and more power to them. I mean, cannabis is something that it's criminal that it's been kind of persecuted and prohibited the way that it has. And again, that's my opinion. Some people may disagree with that, but the reason I'm here is not to just be a cheerleader for cannabis. I'm not here week after week just to tell you how much I love it and what effect it's had on my life. I'm here talking with people who are creating new products, who are coming up with new businesses and services in states and countries where cannabis is legal. I'm here to tell you about all the cool stuff that's happening as cannabis shifts from this shady, criminalized part of society into the light, into the normal, accepted, normalized part of our civilized society. This change is happening right now, day after day. There's going to come a day when it does get removed from the Schedule 1 substance list. There will come a day when it is federally legal. I believe that, certainly. And we're about 15 years, by the way, from the 100-year anniversary of cannabis's true prohibition in the U.S., 1937. And I believe that we will see federal decriminalization of cannabis before that 100-year anniversary. Sometime before 2037, and I don't think it's, a crazy statement to put that out there. I think most people who are paying attention can feel the momentum here. I think if you've been looking or listening to the show, or if you've been reading about cannabis developments in the news, I think you can feel that momentum shift as well. The dam is going to break, and it's definitely going to break sometime before the next 15 years. I believe that strongly. But my point is that what you get from this show that you may not get from some other podcasts is that journalistic integrity. I'm always going to be open and honest with you. When I think something sucks, when I think a company is engaging in shady practices, I'm going to come to this microphone and I'm going to tell you about it. And when I think something is fantastic, when I think a company is doing great things, and you've got an entrepreneur who wants to change the world and give people's lives an experience that they haven't had before and bring cannabis to you in a way that matters and is meaningful, I'm going to tell you about that, whether they sponsor me or not. And that is some transparency that you can guarantee you'll get from me that you can't get at other podcasts. There are people that get sponsored for stuff all the time, and they're not honest with you when somebody's paying them to tell you that a product is great. I'm here to tell you, you can rely on me for that. I'm never going to come here and be dishonest about whether or not somebody is paying me to say something. And as I said, if I'm talking down on somebody, if I experience something, and I'll share one of those later as well, if I'm giving you some experience that I had that's garbage, you can guarantee nobody's paying me to say that either. No company is paying me to talk down on their competitors, right? No one's engaging in that sort of ambush marketing utilizing me. And if it ever happens, I'll tell you that too. So that's what you can rely on from me, is somebody who is looking at this cannabis thing. And as the world, as the U.S. and the world at large is changing, as normalized society is looking into this question of why are we prohibiting cannabis, this plant, which medicinally is helping so many people, and yet we're incentivizing, at least we did for so long, we basically incentivized people to consume cigarettes and alcohol. As we look into these questions and as we start to sort of suss out how we want to behave and what the future looks like in a civilized society, what you can rely on from me is that open transparency and that journalistic integrity. Anyway, that concludes my rant on that, and let's get into this 34th episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. I'm feeling like I got a little extra pep in my step today, listener. I don't know if you could pick up on that, but I'm here enjoying my cannabis and coffee, which is how I love to start every day if I can, but certainly my Sundays are spent with cannabis and coffee in the morning, and I'm recording this on Sunday, December 18th. And I just this morning watched Argentina and their national football club win the World Cup final over France. It was an unbelievably entertaining match. It was went the full 90 minutes and then another half hour of extra time. Argentina ended up winning on penalty kicks. And a big congrats to Lionel Messi and the team at large. Messi had not won a World Cup final. It was one notable omission from his stellar resume that can now be added, and that guy can walk off into the sunset really enjoying his career, because that man, I don't know if you're a fan of soccer, listener, and it's fine if you're not, but I played soccer for many years as a youngster, and I've always loved the game, and what Lionel Messi has been able to do with a soccer ball and the entertainment that he's provided to the world over the last 20 years or so is second to none. And I just wanted to put that out there because I think Argentina, it was a real tough game and they gutted it out, and France is the defending champs. They won the last World Cup, and it was really, really special. So that's given me a little bit of extra energy on this Sunday, and I'm hoping to translate that into some impassioned content for you, listener. And let's get it started with the News Joint Wrap. This is the wrap-up of news stories related to cannabis in and around Illinois, and it's all brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. And let's get started, unfortunately, on a bit of a discouraging note. The plateau in Illinois' monthly cannabis sales is continuing. Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, IDFPR, announced sales of recreational cannabis for November recently, and those sales continued the trend of consistent monthly cannabis sales hovering in the high $126 million range to low $135 million range. That's since March of this year. November's adult use sales landed in that same range at $130,492,724.92. Out-of-state resident sales totals for November reached nearly $40 million. In-state resident sales were just above $91 million. Illinois sold about just over 3 million cannabis items in November, and it's now putting the state at $1.4 billion in total recreational cannabis sales, still with the month of December left in the year. If Illinois reaches $130 million this month in sales, the total for adult use sales in 2022 should get it above $1.7 billion. The state passed the $1 billion mark in August of this year. On a related note, Illinois' medical cannabis sales were their lowest in November since adult use legalization. These stats came from Illinois' Department of Public Health. They reported the medical cannabis sales totals for November. Since May of this year, monthly sales totals have plateaued to the lowest levels since recreational cannabis became legalized in Illinois. And there's a chart that you can see on IllinoisNewsJoint.com in this article. It's shown there that the estimated yearly totals should fall short of 2020 totals and well short of last year. This is the sixth straight month that Illinois medical cannabis sales, monthly sales, finished around $28 million. November sales were $28,204,431. Retail sales of medical cannabis included $12,820,000 in dry flower and $15,380,000 in concentrates or infused products. Licensed medical dispensaries served 63,000 unique patients who purchased 1,120,000 grams of dry cannabis. You can find out more information about that stuff if you're interested at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. And Wild, W-Y-L-D, launches a brand new edibles brand in Illinois. They announced their expansion into the Prairie States market with an array of products made with real fruit flavors. Consumers in Illinois will be able to explore Wild's lineup of flavors, including elderberry, huckleberry, marionberry, peach, pear, pomegranate, raspberry, sour apple, sour cherry, and strawberry. I gotta tell you, as somebody who enjoys the cannabis gummies, some of those flavors seem amazing to me. I've really been kind of stuck around this white grape, black cherry, tangerine. I've had multiple flavors, but elderberry, huckleberry, and some of these sour apple and sour cherry, pear and pomegranate as well. All of that sounds fantastic to me. Wild says all their products are designed to provide a premium cannabis experience that consumers can count on and are made using quality control processes and a high manufacturing standard. Illinois joins Arizona, California, Colorado, Michigan, Nevada, Oklahoma, Oregon, Washington, and Canada in offering Wild products. Maybe you've tried these already, listener. I personally have not, and I'm very much looking forward to trying out some of those flavors. And you can find out more about Wild's products. You can find out about those monthly cannabis sales totals and much, much more related to cannabis and lots of cannabis-related events coming up, all at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. As I mentioned before, listener, I love to start my days with cannabis and coffee. It is a combination that I feel is just magical, really kind of puts me on this nice, not too jittery kick as coffee sometimes does. And the spike that you get in energy from a typical cup of coffee, I find that cannabis kind of makes that, extends it out throughout the day. I feel like that instead of crashing around the early afternoon from some early coffee, I feel like cannabis kind of prevents that from happening. And, I haven't spoken with anybody about it in terms of research that's been done. I really don't even know if there's been any. I kind of doubt that. But my experience is that cannabis and coffee is a lovely combination, and I try and indulge in it as often as I can. And I'm doing so this Sunday morning. The coffee I got from a local shop here in Edgewater, where I live around Chicago, and this is a Kenya blend, if I'm not mistaken, kind of tangy. It's a great flavor. I love the smell of it through the apartment here. And cheers to you. And the cannabis, let's be real, the important part of this combination here, I like to share with you which cannabis strain or which product I'm consuming with said coffee. And this week I'm consuming some mini buds from Green Thumb Industries, I believe, and the strain is Green Crack. That's right. This is a classic strain, high-grade sativa. It's one of those legendary strains. It's been around for a long time, sort of in the vein of Blue Dream, Strawberry Cough, Pineapple Express. It's one of those classic names that's been around for a long time, and a very reliable high-energy sativa. Another sort of pep in my step today, along with the coffee. So I'm loving this Green Crack, and this package I grabbed from the Wrigleyville Sunnyside. The displayed THC average is just under 20%, and the harvest date here was from late July. It is admittedly slightly dry. It's a little drier than I would like, but it's not the kind of thing where it's too harsh on the smoke, and it doesn't induce any headaches or anything like that. So for me, this is an older harvest date. I normally like to keep it within 3 months from when I'm consuming the product, but this one's not so bad. On that note, though, and let me indulge before I get into this. Cheers. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I wanted to bring something related to that to your attention, just, going back to the harvest date thing. I bought something recently from the Sunnyside. It was a Green Thumb Industry product, and it's the brand of the products is called Ann Shine. It's an ampersand and then the word shine, and this is a Green Thumb. This is a GTI product. And they've been selling mostly discounted product. They've been selling sale items of what they call mixed buds. And I got some recently. It's an eighth, it's 3.5 grams, and they usually discount it to around $35 or $40. Now, again, you might be in a different state, you might be in Michigan, you might be in Colorado, and you might be laughing at the, the height of that price still in Illinois. I say that because I was just reading articles that for Michigan, for Colorado, for things like Massachusetts, apparently the price for an eighth is somewhere around $5 to $7 or something. So there are plenty of states with cheaper cannabis products than Illinois. We've definitely hashed that out on the show before. Won't get into it right now, but the reason I bring this up is because for Illinois, $35 for the eighth is pretty good. That's something I tend to look for, discounted sale items. And, this has come up on the show before too. One of the unfortunate practices that's seeming to emerge among cannabis companies is that they will discount old or defective products. And I argue that these products shouldn't even be on the shelves to begin with. But that is what I found from this Shine Mixed Buds product at Sunnyside in Wrigleyville. I was not a fan. I felt that it was way dried out. The harvest date was much earlier than I'd like. It was much too far away from when I picked it up. This was like a May harvest date for something I picked up earlier this month. It was so dried out. The stuff was garbage. And normally I'm a fan of GTI, and I've had the Shine vape pens, and I've been a fan of those for the most part. I like the price point, and I like the amount you can get for them, the amount of oil in the cartridge. But this eighth of Mixed Buds, I just feel, and again, this was a one-time experience with me, so maybe I'm wrong, and please hit that, question or comment link in the show description notes and let me know if you've had a different experience than this. But those Shine Mixed Buds, that to me is feeling a little like one of these shady business practices. I think that they're using that discount to kind of mask product that is insufficient, that is subpar. They're small buds, and it's dry, and it's not good quality. So for me, as I've argued on the show before, you might be saying to yourself, well, hey, they discounted it pretty heavily. You get what you pay for. What I'm arguing is that it's great that they're putting stuff on sale, but there is a certain quality threshold that no product on a store shelf should fall below. That's what I'm arguing. None of this stuff, it doesn't matter how little they charge for it. If you spent any money, I would argue if you spent $10 or $15 on an eighth and you took it home and you were really excited about that price point, and you get it home and you open it up and it smells like crap and it breaks apart in your hands, so it's super dry and you know it's going to give you a headache as soon as you smoke it. Is that then worth it to you? Even though you got a great deal, if an eighth is normally $50 and you paid $15, you got a massive discount on that. That's a wonderful deal. But if your product that you get home and try is shit, if you get home and you try that and it's garbage, I don't think that discount makes you feel any better. There's an argument to be made. People say the best tasting meal is the free one. There's an argument that says if you get a free meal or you get a heavily discounted meal, that it really doesn't matter about the quality because it tastes great because of the value. I disagree in this case, and this is somebody who loves a free meal, let me tell you. But I disagree in this case. I do not think that $10, $15 for an eighth, I don't care if it's for an ounce. If I paid $15 for an ounce and then it's stuff that's garbage quality, I'm just going to have to throw it out anyway, right? Like I'm not utilizing that. I'm not even going to utilize it to make a batch of cookies or something. Forget about smoking it. I wouldn't even use that for, swag blunts. I wouldn't use it to bake a batch of cookies that I would give away to somebody. This is just garbage. You don't want to go burn your money. And that is what this is akin to. So that was the experience I had with the Shine Mixed Buds. And maybe you have something different. I would love to know if somebody else had a different experience out there. And believe me, I'll bring it to the show if I hear some other account of what that's like. But for me and for my money, I'm avoiding those going forward. I felt like this is a little bit of a Verano level shady tactic for some of these products here, and I'm sticking to that for now. Listener, my guest today is a cannabis entrepreneur and a bit of an innovator. She is of Latin and indigenous descent. She was born, her parents were born in Mexico, and she is a U.S. Navy veteran. She served for 5 years, was stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and served 2 Pacific Partnership deployments. And she's here today talking about her business, Can-O Comedy. And this is a really cool idea. I talked a little about it in one of the news joint wraps that I've done. It is combining cannabis and dinner and stand-up comedy. And I just think it's a match made in heaven, and they have an event coming up for Christmas, and there'll be a lot more to get excited about in the future. But here to talk a little about this idea she came up with and the event coming up is Stoner Nat. Welcome, Nat.
Thank you. How are you?
Great. And thank you for taking some time to join us today and just sort of share a little about what brought Can of Comedy about. I want to start by just getting to know you. Did I have all that right with that introduction? You served in the Navy and then obviously came to Chicago after that. Service seemingly was important to you. And what was serving like? Why did you feel that you wanted to do that?
I've always been very school motivated, so that was the driving factor behind it, I suppose. There was always that interest in it because of the GI Bill. You graduate high school as well and realize how kind of tough it is to get yourself up off the ground. Don't really have the resources to carry yourself through school. And that's where the military tends to kind of step in a lot for, I would suppose, a lot of schools, a lot of minority communities out here in America. So I did 5 years hospital corpsman, which is their medical field in the Navy. We also take care of the Marines. We're the medical care for the Marines, so that we are constantly tied with them. However, I did blue side, so that meant that I was attached to a ship at one point or another on my time in the Navy.
Gotcha. Okay, attached to a ship. And this says you spent some time in Cuba, is that right?
Yes, that was my first duty station. So you go to A school and they tell you, pick 5 places you want to go to, 5 commands, just put them down, and we'll try and get you at least one of them, which is usually a given. They'll usually land you at least one of the spots you ask for.
Nice.
It was a pretty cool deal. So I put 4. There was 4 already. I knew where I wanted to head to. 5th one, I'm like, I don't know. 4, that's already a lot of different places. I can't really think of a 5th one. I just put the Bahamas just almost as a joke, really, not even thinking anything of it. Like, cool, yeah, let's go to a beach. Mm-hmm. And that's when I found out about Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Wow. Yeah. So you put down the Bahamas and you ended up going to Guantanamo Bay?
Yes.
Wow. That is not the beach you had in mind, I have to imagine.
I'm sure he had a sense of humor on him with that one.
Yeah, I would hope so. But how was that? I mean, that must have been quite an experience. You loved it?
Yes, it does get a lot of hate because it is an isolated military base, meaning you can't get off unless you're going on leave or on orders off island. I was there before they had cell phone towers as well. The only place you really had internet service was wherever there was Wi-Fi, so in your barracks, or like the community areas where you can go and hang out with, like the bowling alley and things like that. So, but I guess growing up the way I didn't really have my first cell phone until I was about really when I joined the military. I had one for a bit my junior year, but other than that, I grew up very much still out there, not really being involved with technology too much.
Gotcha.
So for me, I guess that's why I kind of took to it right away. It was like taking a step back into your childhood. It was definitely one of the last areas that you'll find, at least in America, where it has that, I guess, old style of living. Parents definitely spoke about how much better their kids did in school because, again, no cell phone service. I guess sooner or later there was going to need to be added cell phone service, but I'm glad I was there before they did that.
Yeah. I definitely, it seems lovely. I sit here now, as a full-on tech addict, like I feel like the rest of us are. Yes. I get reminded by this app on my phone, Screen Time, how much time I'm spending every week staring at it, and it's not a good figure. So I'm trying to work on that. But that being said, I remember my first cell phone I got when I was like 13, and it was one of those brick phones that you'd pull a lever. So there wasn't a lot of capability, and I wasn't on it very much. And the simplicity, of that, and especially I would imagine combining that with being in a place that's not your home, a place where you're there to do a job, and it's pretty much just all about that, and the focus is there. There's definitely a kind of appeal to that, I think, especially with all the tech addiction now. Just the ability to unplug and be present where you are and be with the people that you're there with. There's definitely an appeal to that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. I still try to remind myself as well, because it's so easy to get into the cycle of constantly being on your phone, on your laptop, what have you, and forgetting to just step outside for a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Super important. And on that note, you came up with this Cano Comedy idea for a business where you're bringing people together and you are infusing a get-together with cannabis and comedy. How did this idea come about?
So for me, it was wanting to start a company of my own, really wanting to kind of put attention and purpose into what I did as well. I didn't want it to just be solely about making money. I wanted it to have a meaning. Cannabis, big part of my life. I did start smoking as a teenager, so I quit for the Navy, obviously. But I separated in California, so it was completely legal there. Separated, got right back into it. So from there, it was wanting to support the fight and really trying to change the stigma around cannabis. You kind of get I guess a little fed up with the hypocrisy a bit. Like the other day, I step outside Target, 5 people in a row all smoking a cigarette. Right by the doorways and everything. And you can't light up a joint, which is already proving to be less harmful without all this stigma and stereotypes around it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's something that, hypocrisy has definitely come up on the show in different facets before. But the notion of how America basically for a long time almost incentivized smoking cigarettes and then prohibits smoking cannabis. And as you just mentioned, we know how harmful, we know so many different ways and a lot about how harmful, cigarettes are. And, I remember growing up and I had different jobs. I worked in warehouses, I worked in retail, and, people who smoked cigarettes basically got extra breaks throughout the day because they would go every hour and have their smoke. And I remember thinking as a 16, 17-year-old, I didn't take up, smoking really, but I did have the thought hey, wait a minute, if I smoke cigarettes, I'm getting extra breaks, right? You guys can, and as you said, people are standing outside Target. It's just completely normalized. It's a behavior and it's a substance that's completely normalized in the country, whereas cannabis is still being prohibited, as you mentioned, which is frustrating.
Yeah, it very much is. So I did wanted to kind of just join that fight, and I've always been very passionate about cannabis. Even while I was in the military, I was being asked questions by my cousins about cannabis still, and hey, is this when the crystals, the THC crystals came out, they were curious about that and wanted to confirm hey, this is actually cannabis, right? So I was still kind of a go-to person for cannabis, even though I hadn't really been in the game for a few years. So I just, that passion and that genuine love for it has always been there. So putting together after that was just finding the elements that I felt would kind of support that for Cano Comedy, which to me, comedy is one of the only ways that can help change a person's minds on very controversial topics. You saw that with Lenny Bruce. He's a very famous guy, very famous comedian. He's the start of it all. And because of him, you can go out there and know that you are not going to be arrested for profanity or obscenities or almost everyday language we're used to hearing out there now.
Right.
Yeah, I would say Lenny Bruce was really the start of the change of that, and he fought that through comedy.
Yeah, that's awesome, and a great shout out. Lenny Bruce is a legend, and and I think, as you mentioned too, comedy. Comedians are really they're modern day philosophers. We look to them often to find out where the line is on social issues, even in conversation. You go to a comedy club because you want to hear someone go up there and disseminate complex issues of the day and do so in a way that is palatable through jokes. The medicine goes down a lot easier with a spoonful of sugar, and in this case, the comedy's the sugar and the medicine is the hard truths about reality. And comedians, we look to them for that, definitely. And I think, that's been the case for a long time, but, there hasn't been clubs that just so openly had cannabis, on the menu as part of the get-together. Obviously, with the prohibition, there hasn't been the opportunity and such. So combining this substance which brings people together and is great for socializing and really, you know, lets the laughs flow a little bit more freely. It seems perfect to combine that with comedy as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so, because I was hoping it kind of made sense to me as well, and I think it supports it perfectly. Food also, everybody loves getting together. I know whenever I go to see a stand-up comedy show, I love it when food is being served as well. So for me, it seemed natural to add food into the mix, and it just so happens that food is just a great way to bring people together. Everybody feels comfortable and more relaxed when we're sitting down to good food.
That's a great point too. Sharing a meal is huge, and I noticed that at Can of Comedy, you guys are serving a local Chicago food at your events. Is that right?
Yes, I'm very excited. I have 2 restaurants right now lined up. The next one, I'm so excited for him. I've been wanting to work for him for a while, so I'm really excited to announce him when that time comes. For now, I wanted to make sure that my own personal thumbprint was on my brand as well. So for me, that was getting back in touch with my Native American indigenous roots and getting to learn more about that part of myself. And also realizing that there is a lot going on with the Native American community that isn't really known about or talked about. And they're saying that is contributing to the genocide of Native Americans, is because nobody really knows what's going on with them, with their communities.
Can you give us like some examples about that, like that? Because I've read as well, and I know that, you know, the tribes, like it's a community that doesn't get a lot of press, doesn't get a lot of coverage. They don't have pipelines to a lot of media, so we don't know what's going on a lot of the time. And I think, you know, you have the indigenous tie-in with Can of Comedy here, and so what sort of awareness do you want to bring?
I suppose the missing and murdered indigenous women movement is really the top one that is kind of on everybody's mind, I would say.
Right, and that's an orphanage that I noticed when I was reading through that a portion of the proceeds at Can of Comedy are giving back to the missing and murdered indigenous women. Is that right?
Yeah, 10% of proceeds will be going to a movement. I'm working with NS Grant, I believe, and also reaching out to the organization itself to set up a best route for them. But they are about 10% more likely to be murdered in America. I think 13% more likely in Canada. And there's just a huge issue going on talked about, where they are going missing in large numbers. And, you know, and again, just nobody really knows. And the government, the state, what have you, not much effort really gets put into finding them. I think there's a recent issue where they supposedly I believe they have already confirmed there's like a few bodies in a landfill, and the police don't want to put in the effort to retrieve those bodies.
Gosh, yeah, that's terrifying. And I know that there's an unfortunate history, obviously, in both the U.S. and Canada of some terrible tragedies happening with Native American communities all throughout the last several hundred years, and it's really disappointing, obviously, that it's continuing now, and especially that they can't rely on help from law enforcement the way that, you know, other communities seemingly rely on, as they should be able to. But you're turning attention to this, and you have a holiday special coming up at Can of Comedy, an Indigenous Christmas. So you're using this great business idea, and you're using it to draw awareness to this issue that, you know, you care about, and, you know, you're being able to drive some portion of the proceeds to go to it as well, which I think is wonderful. Can you talk a little about the Indigenous Christmas event coming up?
Yes. I'm so excited to be working with this chef. So there are only 7 Native American executive chefs in the country, and one of them lives in the Midwest. She's from Wisconsin, and she lives out here in Chicago, and she will be cooking a traditional holiday meal, and we will be infusing the meal with cannabis, all from the dispensary.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
I hope so. I'm very excited for it. There's going to be bison brisket, the roasted turkey. It just made sense because, it's roasted and we're going to be roasted.
Of course.
And the meal is going to be itself at a minimum of 20 milligrams, but it should be adjustable all the way up to 100 milligrams if you want to kick it up a little bit more.
Whoa, you can supercharge it. I love that you can customize the level of your edible infusion. I think that's a real innovation right there. That's very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's took a minute to kind of figure out the numbers and the math, and hopefully it all comes out right. We're using 3 different strains. Dessert will be a CBD strain. It's going to be a 2-in-1 CBD strain, so it's going to have 5% THC, 10% CBD, and we'll level out the night with that at the end with making your own edible in a mug in a microwave in a minute or less.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So you're going to teach people how to bake their own edibles, and I see on the site here that they'll have, one of 3 choices: apple pie, pumpkin spice latte, or a sugar cookie, all of which sound delicious. And I think just the knowledge of knowing how to infuse something, a treat at home that you maybe like. This is fantastic. So the events in general like this, you have the Indigenous Christmas, and when is this coming up, by the way?
This is Wednesday, December 21st, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, cool. So 6 to 10 on December 21st. And how can people get involved? Are there still tickets available?
We do have a few tickets available, yes. We will be having comedy acts returning this coming spring. The next show will be in March, I believe, April timeframe. And we will for sure be having comedy acts coming back at that time. This Christmas it is almost sold out, guys, so hop to it.
Yeah, get after it. And I can see a link to purchase tickets if you'd like at canocomedy.com/events, listener, if you want to go right now and lock a spot in there. Very, very exciting. Stoner Nat, again, this is really cool. Like, how do you go about, the comedians that you're dealing with here? Where right now, obviously this is still early on, but how would somebody get involved if they want to sort of showcase their stand-up?
I'm open to working with anybody, really. Give me a shout out in the email and through text. I do have my business line. You can message me or call me through there. That is also on my website, and just reach out to me, and I'm open to hearing what you got. Send me your resume and let me know what kind of training you got if you have it, and we'll go from there.
There you go. There's the contact page on the website for any prospective comedians out there who want to maybe toke up a little bit and try a tight 5. Try a tight. Well, I guess it's probably more than 5 minutes. What's the set? Like 20 minutes? How long are they like on stage?
20-30 minutes.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, want to have somebody up there that's able to kind of last throughout, certainly. But this all sounds wonderful, and the next show coming up in the spring, I think this is something that I believe that as more cannabis businesses come up, I think that and Chicago, this area kind of starts to embrace them more. The events you're doing at Can of Comedy, I think that I just believe this is going to blow up. I think more people are going to want to take part in this and just have a good time and eat, try some food. Some of the food that's listed on this site for the event sounds amazing, and hearing some good jokes and just kind of unwind with some good company and some good cannabis. What sounds better than that?
Yeah, right. No, it's going to be good food, you guys. I'm really excited for this. She went over the stuffings, chestnut, wild rice. Yes, I'm excited for the food. If anything, come for that.
Yeah, bison brisket. You just mentioned that, and I've had some bison over my life. I had a bison burger in like the Minnesota area. I've been able to get some like randomly in different spots, and that is just the best. There's just something about it that is it's really delicious, and I would absolutely even just come for that, I think, and the other great food that you were talking about there. Stoner Nat, creator of Can of Comedy and the cannabis entrepreneur, thank you so much for stopping by the show. I like to kind of wrap these things up with quick hits, just some quick yes or no kind of favorite questions about things you like. Are you game for this?
Sure.
Great. All right, cool. Well, first quick hit, morning bird or night owl? Which are you?
Night owl.
Night owl. Totally relates to that. There's sometimes, the party just got to keep on going,
Yeah, I do appreciate getting things done in the morning, but if I got to do anything, nighttime.
Yeah, I think as I've done the show, I feel like, a response comes up where, like, as people, sometimes get older, or if you have a business along with a family and stuff, like, sometimes people are forced to burn it at both ends. You do got to get up early sometimes, but I think there's times it's important, I think, especially at like a social event or when you're spending time with people that you want to spend time with. Let it go late into the night, let the night turn to morning. I think that's being a night owl is a great thing. Favorite, we were just talking a little about food, but what's the favorite cuisine of yours? I like to ask, if you got a special occasion, or if you've just, if you just secured some excellent funding for your business idea and you're going to celebrate, what's a meal or a dish that you definitely want to go hit?
Pasta.
Pasta?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with pasta. I feel like I go through phases of food, and right now I'm going through a pasta phase. And I've been cooking a lot of pasta lately, and it's just, I love it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's cold outside, I think we crave some more carbs in the wintertime and stuff, and pasta is, great for that. Spaghetti, what's the sauce that you're most into?
I've been following recipes from the Pasta Queen on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she does some very traditional recipes. I wouldn't even know what they're called, honestly. I follow her example, and they turned out very good. Nice.
Hey, I think that works. Go with what the expert says. Red or white sauce, though? Like, what's your preference? Are you more of like an Alfredo?
White.
White. Okay.
No, I know. What is it? I like the lemony Parmesan type of sauces. Like the light sauces.
Yeah, totally. I get you. Those are delicious for sure. Drug or substance of choice, and obviously cannabis is important to both of us, and that can be the answer for sure. But like, are you a coffee drinker in the morning? A tea? Do you like wine or beer in the evening? Anything else besides cannabis?
I love coffee. I do. I do have to go into my tea every now and then, though, and sometimes coffee is just not hitting it, and I gotta go back to my tea, my little tea mug, but coffee all the way.
Sure, yeah, I get that. It's different caffeine contents, different kind of vibe between coffee and tea, and I like combining cannabis with both of those things. So they go well together, and it's there's a lot of great things in life, and I think there's different times to indulge in all of those. Favorite movie or TV show, like something you like to watch, if it's a classic, or if it's something that anytime you come across it on TV, you'll leave it on, or when you're seeking to kind of feel a certain way. Just what's a favorite of yours that you're always happy to watch?
That's a good one. I guess Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop, any of the animes. I'm always down for anime.
Oh, anime. Yeah, that's so great. I love both of those, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo. What's great about those is the music that they utilize in the animation, like the hip-hop of Samurai and the jazz of Cowboy Bebop. And then there's the third one. I think it's Space Dandy. That's like disco, of the third of like that sort of trilogy.
I don't know if it's Space Dandy, but I know there's a third one that he wrote before the writer passed away, I believe. Yeah.
I think that's it. And I love anime as well. We're right now, my fiance and I are going through Attack on Titan, and she's watching Naruto, which I watched when I was younger. Anime is a great genre. Just tells stories differently, and it's most welcome.
Anime all the way.
And finally, so just favorite music. What do you like to listen to? Whether you're unwinding or you're getting hyped for a hangout session or a pitch meeting. What's something that you like to groove to?
I really listen to all genres. I would say my top genres are probably R&B, hip-hop. I do like rock music, some classic rock as well. It would definitely depend on the mood and what we're going for. Latin music, Bad Bunny, oh my God. The world is obsessed with him right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he won something on Spotify, whether he was the number one artist this year or like the most listened or watchers. He was number one in some major category, and I know he was in that Bullet Train movie with Brad Pitt earlier. That guy's killing it right now.
Yeah, he's got me too. He's got me too, Don.
Yeah. Well, right. Well. Hey, that's good company, and I think that there's a lot of good stuff coming down the pipe for Stoner Nat and for Can of Comedy. And listener, I definitely encourage you to go to that website canocomedy.com and check out some of the events coming up and get excited, because I think this is going to spawn a lot of great hangouts and a lot of great nights. So thank you, Stoner Nat, for coming up with it, and thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
All right, great. You take care.
You too. Bye.
And there you have it. I want to thank again my guest, Stoner Nat. Thanks for coming on. She's got a great business idea here, canocomedy.com. And remember, some tickets still available for an Indigenous Christmas coming up on Wednesday, the 21st. So if you're interested, go ahead and book your slots now. She did mention some other shows are coming up in the spring, and I personally am definitely going to be checking these out at some point. So I encourage everybody to check it out for yourself as well. Sounds like a great time. Before I let you go this week, listener, I wanted to bring up two more topics. One of these is an article I read here. It came up about a week and a half ago on the Cannabis Business Times. It was an article with the headline, Curaleaf's Refusal to Bargain with Union Unlawful. And this was put out December 9th, 2022 by Tony Lang. The subheader is, the National Labor Relations Board ruled this week that the multi-state cannabis operator has engaged in unfair labor practices in Chicago. I'll go through a little bit of this article. I won't read the whole thing. I'll share it on the show page. It's definitely worth your time. But anyway, it starts with the line here. Curaleaf's refusal to recognize and bargain with unionized cannabis workers in Chicago was ruled unlawful by the National Labor Relations Board on December 5th. Now, I just want to point this out. This is not a cannabis board that says this is unlawful. This is the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB. This is the group that looks into all companies and all labor and the relationships between workers, unions, and managers and all of that. They said that this refusal to bargain was unlawful. And they're saying the case stems from March 31st of last year, 2021, when election results revealed workers at Windy City Cannabis on Weed Street in Chicago voted 11-10 to join the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 881 Union. The dispensary on Weed Street, I mean, come on. How do you not love that? The dispensary on Weed Street. It's one of 10 Illinois retail locations owned by Massachusetts-based Curaleaf. In April of 21, Curaleaf's legal counsel submitted 5 objections to the election results, claiming delays in the U.S. Postal Service caused voter disenfranchisement for the mail-in election, but ultimately 0 ballots were challenged. The article goes into some of the details of the back and forth between the legal counsel and then the company, and I'll skip ahead a little bit here because I encourage you to read the whole thing, but this is the point that I wanted to highlight. In May of this year, Curaleaf wrote an email, and they said that the company did not agree to recognize Local 881 as the exclusive representative of the employees at the Weed Street store, and that they intend to challenge the NLRB decision, and concluded by saying, at this time, Curaleaf will not agree to bargain. Well, on December 5th, the National Labor Relations Board ordered Curaleaf to cease and desist from, quote, failing and refusing to recognize Local 881 as the exclusive collective bargaining representative for the Weed Street store workers. I wanted to point this out because unionizing in general is kind of having a moment here in this country. Companies, massive companies like Starbucks, like Amazon, they're waging their own little wars against efforts to unionize at various shops. And it seems like Big Cannabis now is kind of getting in on that too. And by Big Cannabis, I'm talking about these massive multi-state corporations here. I'm talking about the Curaleafs, the Green Thumbs, the Veranos, the Cresco Labs. These companies, they're getting as big, or they're on the road to becoming as big as the Starbucks and the Amazons. And they are already trying to squash some of these union efforts as well. And here in Illinois, rightfully so, I think we really love and protect our unions for the most part. I understand the business side of it, that some managers don't like it, but it really is crucially important for the collective bargaining rights of employees to be able to separate themselves from management and come together and talk about issues at the company that they on their level as employees feel are untenable or that need to change, and that, maybe the company's not willing to come to the table with individuals to talk about or to change policy over. This is why unions are important. This is why they need to be protected, and we don't want this kind of practice coming into the cannabis industry. If your bud tenders are miserable, if they're dead-eyed and exhausted and hate the company they're working for, well, it's not going to be too long until that dissatisfaction gets passed on to you, the consumer. So what I want from my bud tender is the same thing I want from a bartender. I want them to be social, happy, and knowledgeable to tell me and help me get to the altered state that I'm seeking. That's what I want. Somebody who's in the right state of mind to give me the counsel and the kind of guidance that I'm there looking for from them specifically. They're who we expect to be knowledgeable about these products, and they should be in a state of mind where they're ready, willing, and able to communicate those things to us in a short, friendly, fun, hopefully, manner. Another thing that's going to happen is that the best people, the people that we really want as bud tenders, they're going to get out of the industry. They're going to go find something else to do with their time and their talents if these companies are refusing to acknowledge unions that those shops voted to install. This is not something that we can allow to continue. So I just wanted to put that out there. Companies are doing this the same way that you're reading about in the news week after week, the same way that Starbucks and Amazon are trying to squash their unions. Cannabis companies are doing the same thing. And you can't allow this to happen because we want happy employees as our bud tenders. That's what happy and well taken care of. That's what we want. One last thing before I let you go this week, listener. Chuck Schumer, the current Senate Majority Leader, is apparently making a last-ditch push for a cannabis banking bill, the SAFE Banking Act that I've mentioned on the show before, talked about it over the summer, and there have been some up and down efforts this year to get this passed. Senator Cory Booker was very famously on board for it, made a push, but the problem here, which is highlighted by Politico and several others, I might note, they've made note here that basically this is a bill that Chuck Schumer himself tried to squash last year. He said, he's on the record as saying that safe banking would have negatively affected, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of that safe banking would negatively impact other reform efforts. And that is why the bill as it was could not pass. Now, after the midterms, most likely, where Democrats are in a position that they have a little more power than they had anticipated at this time, I think the expectation much of this year was that Republicans were going to come in and take control of both houses and that the rest of Congress would be a lame duck Congress for President Biden. The last 2 years, he wouldn't be able to get anything done. That's not what happened. The Democrats, they were able to maintain control of the Senate, and the majority that Republicans have in the House is not nearly to the level that they would have expected. So the point being, now there's some wiggle room for Democrats to try and continue to get things done, especially before the inaugurations in late January. So that's what this strikes me as, is Schumer trying to backpedal and basically ram something through that last year he wasn't ready to do, and now is so doing really for, I think, just some kind of a political victory or trying to capitalize on some unforeseen midterm victories that weren't in the cards. And the reason I bring this up is that because even if he hadn't already tried to squash this, and let's say everything was on the up and up and they were just trying to push this through right now, unfortunately, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, or as I sometimes like to refer to him, Mitch McTurtle, because he looks like a turtle. That's not any more complicated than that. Look at the picture of the man, look at his face, and tell me that that's not a human turtle.
Turtle?
May I help you? Are you a member of the Turtle Club?
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly, but am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
Turtle?
Yeah, that's Mitch McConnell. That's the guy. And that guy has apparently declared his absolute opposition to the Safe Banking Act and apparently any cannabis reform on the Senate floor. So, unfortunately, for all of us who might have benefited from Mr. Schumer's change of heart, Turtle Man says that's a no-go, which is really unfortunate considering that Professor McTurtle is a senator from Kentucky, one of the states with the most devastating opioid addiction rates, a state that could really benefit from some medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, I bet, too. But hey, I guess Senator McTurtle knows better than the rest of us, and he has declared his absolute opposition to safe banking and to Senator Schumer's efforts to push that through. So unfortunately for you and I, that Safe Banking Act, which would allow cannabis businesses to get on the federal banking system so that businesses didn't have to use bags of cash, so that they didn't have to go in and make crazy unsafe deposits and make themselves prime targets for robberies and all of that stuff, Mr. McTurtle says that it's really not necessary and he's going to stop it from happening. Yeah, that's what we get. That's unfortunately as much positive and exciting development as there has been these last few years for cannabis. There is very, very much still alive and well the stigma of the 1900s. That lingering stench of reefer madness is clinging to this society like a shit stain in a shag carpet. I refuse to not talk about this because this is something that really would have been beneficial. There are tons of businesses, small businesses, in addition to these multi-state corporations. It's not just about people formulating this federal multi-state highway between cannabis businesses and all that. Safe banking is not going to establish that. They would need to remove it from Schedule 1, decriminalize, and then set up some kind of federal framework. We're still a long way away from that. But safe banking would allow these business owners to not be in such a perilous, precarious situation by just raking in all this cash and not being able to open business bank accounts at any federal bank. Unfortunately, it seems like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back always, but we got to try and stay positive as best we can. We are certainly in a better place with cannabis than we were 20, 30 years ago. I mean, it's not even comparable. I say this all the time on the show. The fact that I can, on the way home from work or wherever I am, the fact that I can just place an order on my phone, go to a dispensary, pick up this order and go home without any kind of dealing with a dealer, without waiting for somebody else's schedule, without needing to kind of figure out a meeting place, and so many of the negative aspects of when cannabis was only a black market option. We are so far and away improved from that. It's not even comparable now. But as I've mentioned before, and as I continue to say on this show, that stigma is something we're still fighting against right now. There are a lot of people in power, unfortunately, like Schumer and the Turtle. These people are still in power, and they're still able to affect our lives in a really, really principled way. And it's just something that we got to think about come election time. This is why votes matter. But, the momentum is still there. I know, as I said earlier in the episode, that safe banking is going to pass at some point, and before that 2037 100-year marker from when cannabis was prohibited in the U.S., I expect all of that. I expect the safe banking, decriminalization, federal legalization, hopefully, and amnesty, and all of that. I expect all that to happen by 2037. And I think that the momentum that we all feel of this is going to break the dam sometime soon. But today's not that day, but I think it's important to acknowledge the changes that have been made and the positive impacts that they've had. So I'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode, and make sure you keep an eye on the social media channels at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and you can always reach me at host@cannabismanpodcast.com, or just click that link in the show description notes for leave a comment or question. Be sure to leave a rating or review if you haven't, and do me a favor, tell somebody about the show that you think might like it. I would really appreciate the help promoting this thing. But I'll be back again soon with another episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is an original production of myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music by Yusu Kim, a.k.a. Goodson. Other music by Pat Perez, and logo designed by Vorbroker Media. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe, and share whenever you can.